Well, our trip to Punta Cana started out by our flying to Tampa, Florida, spending a few days in Tampa. You can see the hotel room was very nice. It was actually a suite. We visited some friends in Tampa, in Sarasota actually. We drove by rented car. And then a couple of days later, on the 24th of May, we went on to fly to Punta Cana. Punta Cana is on the tip of the Dominican Republic, and the Dominican Republic is right next to Haiti, so it's out in the Caribbean. When we arrived at the airport, you can see the picture, rather unusual structures, and these buildings have thatched roofs, and they're very attractive looking. When we arrived, we went for our luggage, and we found that dogs were sniffing the luggage. There were policemen around, and obviously it's a drug haven, this area, and so that was a concern. From there, we took a small minibus, and with that minibus, we went to our resort. Now, our resort was about half an hour away. We went through some pretty disappointing landscape, rocks, nothing but rocks. Everything, a road was started to be built and then was abandoned in the typical Dominican fashion, we found out later. Houses were on the edges, and many of them had just a basement or a first floor, and then wrought iron sticks sticking out from the cement. And obviously the building wasn't finished, and nobody was working on them. And we were somewhat surprised, and we asked about this, and there are several reasons for it. One of them is that drug lords have been caught when they were building their mansions, and of course when that happens, everything stops. The drug lord gets jailed, and the building gets abandoned. Now that was one thing for the very expensive buildings. Now the majority of the buildings are very, very plain, and we will show you something later. And these buildings were half finished, or as I say, they were just basements or first floor and no roof. But people start moving in when it gets to be to the point where just the roof is missing. They can do a temporary fix and then wait a couple of years and then continue. And the reason is simply this. They are living according to their means. A mortgage is unheard of. So actually when they have enough money, they buy the land. Then they wait. When they have enough money, they start building the basement or the foundation. And then when they have some more money, maybe another couple of years further down the road, they build the first floor and so on. Our guide, who we talked to later about this, said that it took him 9 years to build his house. Now, this is a very un-American way of doing things. I mean, actually, can you imagine no debts, probably no credit cards, and no mortgages? I mean, that's un-American. And we were amazed by this, but maybe it's not such a bad way to do things. Well, anyway, the our resort, was one of many, and they're all scattered along the beaches, and the beaches are absolutely indescribable. They are so gorgeous. The sand is like flour and so soft, and there isn't a piece of dirt on the beaches. They're being cared for so well, but we'll get to that later. We arrived at our hotel after they dropped off all kinds of people in other resorts, and then when we came to our resort, we found it to be quite plush compared to what we had seen on the way up. And well, it's obviously a very important source of income for the country, and so these resorts are being taken care of very well, either by the country or by the investors, and the investors are probably Americans, as in most cases, or foreigners anyway. So the minute we got to the resort, there was a gate, and there were guards, and there are walls all around it, so you feel like you're in a ghetto, but it's a gorgeous ghetto. I mean, it's been very, very well cared for, as you can see from some of the pictures. But I want to see the sunset on the first night we got there. Isn't that gorgeous? That's right over the ocean. And the first thing we did when we got to our room, we made sure we got a room on the first floor. They first put us on the third, and then I was able to change that. And then we went out to the beach, and the beach is only a few steps away. I mean, you can see it, and it's, well, maybe it's 100 feet, maybe a little bit more. And there you can see all those chairs that you can pick any one of them, and you see those little mushroom-type buildings. They're actually covers so that you can put your chair under them when the sun gets to be too bright. And you see all those palm trees, and inside there's a swimming pool, of course, in the development itself on the way to the ocean. And then again, when you look at these mushroom-type buildings, and you look at the top of it, how they're constructed, I put one picture up where you can actually see the structure itself, and that's very interesting. It's well done. The next thing you'll see is a palm tree, and the roots exposed to in a way that I have never seen before. You would feel that no tree could grow under these conditions, but they seem to do very well. And then again, I have more pictures of the beach itself, and I have the chairs sitting around there, people strolling in the ocean. It was all very, very, very nice. And then the thing about this resort is that it is all-inclusive. Now, all-inclusive means that all the meals are included. That includes your breakfast, that includes your lunch, that includes your dinner. And you do this in 13 different restaurants. Some of these restaurants are rather plush and fancy, and you have to make reservations. But the reservation is that you're entitled to it. I think you get for 8 days, you get a coupon of 3 or 4 restaurants. And the rest of them you can have your meals in the self-service bar, and very elaborate and very extensive, and really not a sacrifice at all. And there are tablecloths even there. So restaurants are no problem. Now, as for the food itself, quite frankly, we were not all that thrilled by it. I don't know. You can see the presentation is very nice, and the surroundings are nice, and the ambiance is okay, but the meals, well, the seasoning is something that we don't like, and quite frankly, I don't know, I wasn't too crazy about it. And unfortunately, it was the same in all of the restaurants. Then, what can you do in a place like this? Well, of course, we are retired, so we feel we would like to sit at the beach, and we would like to look at the sunset, and we'd like to get some suntan, and that's all very nice and very fine. But there are some excursions that you can do, and the excursions, of course, are extra, and you pay for them. For the meals, you do not pay, and for the drinks, you do not pay, and that's surprising, too, because you can have wine, you can have beer, you can have non-alcoholic beverages, and as many as you want. And when you're at the beach, you just go to a little kiosk, and you have them fill it with either an alcoholic drink, or more than likely, you take one that is just fruit, passion fruit maybe, or lemonade or something of that kind. Anytime you want to, and it's all on ice. It's being served very politely, and you don't need to tip so every time. So that makes it pretty neat. Tipping is only done really at the end of the stay for the hotel maid, and if the service was halfway decent, and ours was that. It was halfway decent as far as the room service is concerned, and that's putting it about right. I think maybe if we had tipped every night, it would have been better. But it wasn't bad, but it wasn't exceptional either. I mean, they didn't do the room until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. One day they didn't do it at all. So, I mean, okay, could have been a little better. As for the quality of the room, well, I would say it's somewhat of an early travel lodge. Nothing spectacular, believe me, but it was all right. We're not there for the room. We're there for the surroundings, for the ocean, and for the swimming pools. Now, one of the excursions we booked was the monster truck, and the monster truck was really quite an unbelievable vehicle. I think I show you a picture here. There's a picture of a Catholic church, and the monster truck was parked outside that in a big parking lot. We got into this truck, and we found there was our guide, and this is the local tour guide. Of course, you expect to have him collect a tip as well at the end of the trip. And then we started leaving. Now, this truck is monstrous, really. And we thought, well, is this just a gimmick? Do they want this in order to show that it's called a safari? And, of course, there are no lions and tigers, so what are we going to see on the safari? And I was sort of ridiculing this vehicle and said, well, no, it's a nice show, but what's the point? Well, the next thing was we sat in this thing, it's open, and it is noisy. You wouldn't believe the noise this thing makes. It's a horrendous thing. It's a big truck, really. And we were driving over some pretty rough roads, and for a while it was something that we could have done with a pickup or with a minivan just as easily. But eventually, believe me, it was good that we had this thing because we went right through a river, and that's not easy to do with a vehicle. But that was fine. We saw nice flowers. There's a picture of the yellow flower that you can see, and then we came to a house. And frankly, by that time, we weren't in the monster truck yet. This was just on the way to the monster truck. This house is a typical Dominican house that people live in, and these people made it available to the tours. So people were traipsing through their house. I suppose they got paid for by the tour guide, by the tour organization. And by the way, the tour is sponsored by U.S. Air. So it's a deal between U.S. Air and the resorts. So when we went into that house, I'll show you a couple of pictures of it. It's nothing elaborate. There are 10 kids in there and the parents. And the thing is, these people don't have very much to do. Mañana is a big thing, and siesta is a big thing, and so they have nothing better to do but to make kids, and that's what they do. And a family with 10 children is nothing unusual. And they cram them into these little cottages. I mean, this is in our eyes, it's a cottage, an outhouse outside. They have no toilet, and this little cottage. And in this cottage are maybe 4 rooms, and they're just loaded with beds, and people sleep 2 and 3 to a bed. And then you see there's a guy sitting there. You can hardly see him on the side, an older fellow, and he's happy when you give him a couple of bucks. And he shows you lets you go through the house. That's the kitchen. The kitchen is really something not very elaborate, and everything is very simple. And outside you find fruit trees and some very unusual trees, and then there are other houses like that in the neighborhood. And then we came to a cockfighting arena. Now, I'm going to show you that at the very end because it's a little movie, and they did actually give us a demonstration, not only of the cockfighting itself, but also of how they train the cocks. And the first 3 little movies are of the kind of things they do to these roosters in order to get them excited and get them to do the right steps. And by the way, as far as the cockfight was concerned, this was not a bloody cockfight. They covered up the spores so that they couldn't hurt each other. But they kept going at each other. It's unbelievable. And you know, when they do get into the act, these cocks are worth a fortune. I mean, $30,000 for one of those little, ugly little things is what they pay for them. And the betting that goes on, and they come from all over the Dominican Republic to participate in this. They sit around this side and they place bets, and very, very substantial bets. People say that money like $30,000 is nothing that they spend for betting. And the people that are wealthy in the Dominican Republic, to a large extent, are ball players. And the ball players would have these very fancy, elaborate homes. Again, these homes would be a gated community, just like the resorts are. Well, anyway, then we finally got into that truck and drove around in the surrounding countryside, and you see a very lush and green countryside. Looks very nice. And the tour guide then told us we have to stop at the manufacturing facility. And this is what are they making? They're making some sort of gook that you can eat. It's a paste. It's I don't know. It's like I don't know. They like bonbons, and they wrap them up and they cut them in squares, and you eat it. It's like caramel. And you see this guy with a little ladle working there, and he keeps ladling it out and labeling it out, and he has to do that for 2 hours before it starts hardening. And then you can start packing it and making it ready. And then he's got to go and over this fire for another 2 hours and another 2 hours and so on with a new batch. Must be a horrible job. I wouldn't want it. And well, Well, we drove again through the countryside. There were cows running next to us, and there were hills, really, really high hills, and you had to get into them. And when we looked out the front in one of these pictures, you can see cows walking on the road, and nobody with them. And we just had to drive behind them until they finally went away. And then we stopped at a little place where you could take a swim, and you could sit in a chair, and you could watch. And we spent there about an hour. And of course, there were those souvenir shops. We went into the souvenir shops, and they tried to sell you all kinds of stuff. Nothing that you could really use, but it's part of the deal. And eventually we started getting to that river, and we crossed that river. Now you shouldn't believe this. You can see it though. You can see the second truck. There were two of us. The second one starting to get into the water. We had just gotten out of it. We took a big run and went straight through the middle of it and came out at the other end. And then the second one did the same thing. And then the next stop was at a voodoo doctor. Now the voodoo doctor, or the voodoo priest, had a little house up in the open somewhere. And we went inside, and I took a couple of pictures, and you can see nothing but bottles and jars and all kinds of potions. And we were told that the voodoo in the Dominican Republic and in Haiti is very different. Haiti is all vicious, bad, nasty. If you want to have somebody killed, you go to the voodoo doctor, and he has a doll, and he puts a pin into it and all that kind of stuff. In the Dominican Republic, it's quite different. It's somewhat connected with the Catholic Church. You see the pictures of the saints and all those things, and then it's more a good thing. But if you don't like your mother-in-law, you might get a potion. And if you would like to meet a girl, you can get a potion for that, and there's all kinds of things like this. I didn't think it was all that fascinating, but these people are very well recognized, and the voodoo doctor is a personality in the area, and it's very much appreciated. And then from there, and by the way, when we entered that hut where he was, it started pouring. You cannot believe how bad it was. When we got back into our vehicle to get to the point where we had to change back to the other one, we went through this rain, and of course the vehicle's open, so they put a tarp up, but the tarp's only on the top, so the rain came in on the sides, and we got wet as can be, and it wasn't very pleasant then. The guide told us that was the first time he'd ever experienced rain of that size on a trip. Well, then we went back to that church where the vehicle was exchanged, and finally, in order to get back to our point of destination and to our resort, we came through a little town. And in that town, there are three pictures of stores. Now, the first one is just a typical kind of store that you find there. But the second and third one are butcher shops. There's a butcher shop on the left in both of these stores, in these pictures. And you see meat hanging on a string. That was meat that people buy to eat on the road, traffic going by, flies all over the place. I mean, I can't believe this. And the meat looked not red anymore. It looked sort of grayish white. Horrible stuff. And people eat this and buy this. Well, anyway, we were taken back to our resort, and we ended up back where we started from. Now, about the resort, I should fill you in a little bit more on that. Well, we got back into our resort, and you can see there's a few pictures of the swimming pool, and far in the back you can see the ocean, but we had those pools, and there were several. There was one, of course, for smaller children, and one for a 5-foot pool was the big one that everybody used, and there weren't all that many people, so really we had lots of seats at the ocean and so on. But over the weekend, for some reason or other, they must have invited local families with children, and it was just not very nice as far as we were concerned. We were swamped with those kids, and we didn't particularly care for that. But then, you have to be realistic. We are the minority now, being older, and that not everybody is our age is understandable, and a lot of the young people and college students were there. So really we have a feeling that the resort was not selected properly for us. So the next time we would like to go back, but the next time we go back, we will try to find a more upscale resort where there's maybe a more select clientele. Those three pictures I showed you are of the immediate area around the pools. And then you can see paragliding. That was an activity that took place at the ocean and constantly, one after another after another. Unfortunately, they didn't go very high, and we thought it wasn't worth going for it. The next thing I'm showing you is the inside of one of the restaurants, and this is a typical, nicely set tables, tablecloth, and we're picking something out of the bread area. And the bread, too, it was something that we really didn't enjoy. It was white bread, which I normally like, but this bread had no body to it. It was all like feather light, and you could put it in your hand, and you had a feeling you have absolutely nothing there. It was not very good. And then the next picture shows you the entrance to our resort, and there's a bus pulling in, and I have two pictures of it, and you can see that they put the same sort of roofing on the bus that you have on those little mushrooms. The next picture is of a restaurant in a club, and the club is a couple of miles away, and there is not a railroad, but a train pulled by some sort of a motorized vehicle, and that runs 24 hours a day, all night long, and it's about every 15 minutes or so you can grab it. And some of the restaurants are in the club area, and most of them are in the area where we are staying near the ocean. The club area has certain advantages too, and you will see on some of the additional pictures that I'm showing, there is, for instance, a bar where the bar stools are submerged in water, and you see a restaurant building, and you see a couple of menus. And the reason I put those menus up is because the translation into German is unbelievable. There's, for instance, a vegetable mousse that you can have. You know what mousse is? It is sort of chocolate mousse is very well known. There's a vegetable mousse. But the translation into German, vegetable translates into Gemüse, and mousse would be left alone, but they translated it into mouse. So it's a Gemüse or it's a vegetable mouse that they're offering on the menu, and that's in German. So I thought that was kind of hilarious. And if you have a way of magnifying this particular picture, maybe you can stop it and you can see it, and you won't believe it. It's kind of funny. Then we have another sunset a little bit differently, and a picture of the train that runs between the club and the main complex, and a swimming pool that's over in the club area. And as I say, there are those stools that are submerged in water where you can sit and nibble on your drink at the bar. And what else can I show you? There are some more buildings within the compound, and that's usually the club building, and another picture of the dining facility, that is the self-serve dining facility, and that's really very, very nice. And the last picture is of the airport again. A little bit larger picture so you get a good idea of what it's like. Well, that's about it, and I think what I will do is I will now run the cockfight. And as I indicated before, the cockfight is not something bloodthirsty in this case because it's only done for demonstration to us. But normally these cocks are fighting to the end. One of them is going to be a survivor and one is going to be the victim. And the survivors, if they survive 10 fights or so, are getting priced higher and higher each time. And by the time they got 10, 15 fights under their belt, they're worth at least $30,000, and that goes on from there. So this is an interesting game. Not that I would enjoy it. I hate this kind of thing, and I didn't even like the demonstration because I saw feathers flying all over the place, and they got kind of vicious. I don't understand this, but some people seem to get enjoyment out of it. So so be it. Dogfighting is about the same thing, I suppose. Well, that should be about the end of it. Now, the flight back was, I thought that in the Punta Cana area, that airport, that the screening would be easy and no problem. But no, it's the same old thing. You take your shoes off and all that nonsense. And then we got back and we flew back via, on the way down, it was via Charlotte, Tampa, and then we go back up to Charlotte, which is halfway back up north in order to go south, and then come by the Charlotte point practically, and then go to Punta Cana. I don't know why they do this. These are their hubs, and they claim that this is the only way they can do it. On the other hand, they're burning fuel like there's no tomorrow, so it doesn't make too much sense. And on the way back, we went via Philadelphia. Now, that's not quite as far out of the way, so I could understand that. So from Punta Cana to Philadelphia, from Philadelphia home to Albany. And that was it. So here we go. And what else can I tell you? The cockfight, well, you'll hear a lot of screaming, and that's the pictures that were taken. That little movie had voice sound as well. And I was able to convert it to an AVI file so that I could show it on the movie maker. So I guess that's it for today. So long then.
Dominican people make noise. Go, go. Die Leute springen hier, deswegen ist no. Die Leute springen hier. So, heute ist nur eine Demonstration mit wenig Geräusch, aber in der Realität kann man den Geräusch 1 Kilometer weg hören. In der Realität können wir den dabei holen.